The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
You're listening to the Alldus podcast, ServiceNow series. Our guest today is Dallas Blattner. Dallas is the Senior Director of ServiceNow Practice at CRI Advantage. Dallas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, JP. Awesome to be here. Look forward to having a conversation with you today.
So Dallas, let's start with yourself, please, as we do with all of our guests. Could you give us an overview of your background in technology and what your journey has been from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, what's led you to where you are today as the Senior Director of the ServiceNow Practice for CRI Advantage?
My journey, I think, is probably a little bit different than a lot of people within IT. I was thinking about this when I had the opportunity to be a guest on your podcast. And one of the things that I think is interesting to me is I don't have that pedigree, right? The IT pedigree per se. I look at it from a horse perspective. My family, has done and dealt with racehorses and things over time. I watch a lot of racehorses and, racing, the Belmont Stakes, the Preakness, the Kentucky Derby. And I view myself, if anybody knows, California Chrome, kind of an underdog story that was rising from not a great pedigree. The horse was purchased for $15,000, I think, is what it was, versus someone like American Pharoah, who does something substantially more, right? Expensive horse bred to race. Why I say this is because I started out after college into a world of contracts, right? Contracts being IT contracts. So I did have IT background and things like that, but I dealt with other contracts. And this was for essentially as a civilian employee for the nuclear Navy. Ironically enough, there's a facility that exists within the Idaho desert, which is where I still live and reside, that deals with the nuclear Navy. And within that, I had the opportunity and learned very quickly, I think, throughout my IT journey when I dealt with those IT contracts. One of the prime examples was understanding the requirements for cell phones and how cell phone waves work and other software like a Deltek and these big software applications that are used by companies. Ironically enough, I didn't realize until I started at CRI about 5 years ago now that we out of the desert were on a Remedy platform, a BMC Remedy platform. And when I got into ServiceNow, I think my eyes broke wide open. And why I say this is because the interaction that we had with Remedy was a help desk. We would call in, there was a number, there was no portal, there was no interaction. It was very person-to-person conversation. You call somebody at the help desk, that person puts in your information and essentially captures that ticket for you. When I came to CRI and had the unique opportunity and I started out as a project coordinator to run these projects for ServiceNow, basically, I like I said, mind blown with the capabilities and the processes and the UI and the UX that was present within ServiceNow. So like I said, didn't necessarily have the IT pedigree, didn't know that I wanted to get into IT, but now that I'm in ServiceNow, I don't think there's any going back.
Love that story. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it might be somewhat non-traditional, and you mentioned pedigree a number of times there, but there's no substitute for learning from inside and going up the ladder step by step because you understand the inner workings, which we'll get to in a moment. But as you mentioned, you joined CRI Advantage as a project coordinator. You now find yourself as a senior director of the whole group. So we're going to talk about your evolution and your current role and responsibilities in a moment. But before we do that, tell us all about CRI Advantage first and foremost. Who you are, what you do, mission of the business.
CRI itself, I think, is it's not one of the larger partners that exists out there. But we definitely punch above our weight class. I think that's a direct quote from my CEO. It's a prime example of what we do. within different spaces and things that we delve into, we have a kind of a niche market, I think, that we do really well that kind of sets us apart and allows us to go after these bigger, larger contracts out there because we have that experience, we have that expertise. We still do ITSM, the CSM, the SAM and HAM. We specialize in within that space too, ITOM, discovery, service mapping. There's been a lot of times that we've come in and cleaned up problems that have been present within a CMDB implementation because it takes specialists to understand how that works. It takes a specialist to understand how the governance process and to be able to explain that governance process to clients and individuals that potentially aren't used to that type of work or that functionality that ITOM presents. So within CRI, like I said, we have the ability and the unique ability to do very niche things. One of the prime examples, I think, of a niche thing that we do is, and it's my favorite example to share, honestly, and it's the first thing that I learned when I came to CRI, right? It's really what got us started in the ServiceNow space outside of the ITSM components or functionality. And that's what we call the livestock traceability software program. So what the livestock traceability software program does or enables our end users to do is it tracks livestock movement and disease surveillance components. And there's two unique processes and forms. Within each of those two unique processes and forms, there's a lot of very specific components that are done. Different disease surveillance, different tests for different types of livestock. And then there's different movement related purpose forms. One of the things and why I say that this is my favorite example to share is because, and even my main technical point of contact, who's a vet, right, a head vet, basically stated that there's no two different things today than IT and vets. And we were able to uniquely design this platform, this solution that's built on ServiceNow to be able to pull those two together. So we're bringing vets in Idaho into the modern age. We're giving them the technology. We're giving them that portal. We're giving them those tools and features and functionalities at their fingertips so they can go in the field using a mobile application, using a tablet, recording the information that they need to get for these different types of livestock, capturing the disease surveillance, the test results, the specific things that they need to do across their industry into a ServiceNow platform, creating the records, using an XML schema to be able to send out this information, generate PDFs within the system, create these really pretty looking forms, right, that used to be paper, and send those out to a state of destination. So the entire purpose, if within that acronym, the LTSP, so Livestock Traceability Software Program, it's really to trace livestock and the movement and diseases behind it. Because in the United States, there is obviously a huge industry in Idaho specifically, huge industry within livestock and huge needs behind that. And if a specific, livestock, cattle, horse, pig, sheep has a specific disease, you don't want to have to take massive amounts of time to rifle through filing cabinets to be able to find this information related to this animal. You want to be able to go into the system, type in the specific record number that's behind it, that specific unique identifier, and really quickly find and trace every bit of history associated with that livestock or that cattle, that horse, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you shared that particular example because when you first told me about it, it best encapsulates the opposite ends of the spectrum in a really nice way, which is super cool. Looking at the broader portfolio of what CRI Advantage does and your role as it fits into that, I know we were talking about, look, there's a large presence within the federal space and you also do some work in the commercial side of things. Can you give us a look behind the scenes of what it's like sort of day to day for you and your team who are speaking to the customers, working on implementations, looking at future projects, your role within all of that, and maybe just the broader ServiceNow organization that exists. Help us visualize what it's like there at CRI Advantage today.
The prime example, I think, is the first foray into ServiceNow, I think, for any customer is some sort of lead, right? So we have very great sales team, whether that be LDRs, so the account executives, so the technical folks that do the demonstrations that help solution, help architect things from a initial foray, right? The initial contact that comes from a client. I uniquely have the ability and do today not only oversee the delivery practice, but because of the skill set that I've gained within that delivery practice, I help those sales conversations. I get pulled into those sales calls so I can help solution pain points and problems, not because I've seen everything, right? But I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of problems. I think I have that unique capability to understand the root cause of things. And within that, we work together as that whole. I may be delivery in title and in process, but I still help and focus the sales team within not only the federal practice, but that commercial side when we have that initial call, that initial conversation, to be able to understand why they're looking at ServiceNow. Because if I can help them see the art of the possible and see the scalability, just like the livestock traceability software program does, then it opens their eyes. And I think really showcases the overall configuration and, like I said, the scalability and that art of the possible for the platform. Because without having a vision, right, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, to understand where this journey within ServiceNow from those sales conversations to, hey, we're going live, right? We're having a go live celebration at this point in time. It's hard to see that without some sort of vision behind it.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
If you look at your own journey and growth within CRI Advantage from, as you said, joining as a operations coordinator to now being a senior director in the group, that's been quite the jump, but done in small steps over sustained success within the practice, which obviously shows a growing demand for CRI Advantage services within your customer group. When you look at your journey, particularly the past 2 years since joining CRI Advantage, what are some of the standout moments for you, whether it be highlights that you're particularly proud of, any learns that you look back on, and how does that inform the next phase of the growth of the platform at CRI? It's obviously a very exciting time for ServiceNow, but for CRI Advantage in particular, reviewing the last 2 years of the success you've had with ServiceNow, how does that inform what's coming next for you?
I think that's a great question. And I talked about seeing that vision. It's kind of understanding where you came from and where you are too, so it can help push out and broadcast and see the right path. But over the past couple of years, I think from that project coordinator, operations manager to director to senior director over top of the practice, the journey that I've taken and why I think it's been successful for me is I threw myself into the trenches a little bit within that project coordinator. I remember, and like I said, this was 5 years ago, but this is etched and ingrained in my brain. What I started out with when I came to CRI was really trying to understand the product, taking the pre-sales to sales training that Now Learning offers. What that did for me is it started to build my foundation. And ironically enough, within our delivery practice, that's one of the first sprints that we do in our execute phase. We follow that Now core methodology. We build that strong foundation. Like I said, I don't know if it's by dumb luck or something else, but I built my foundation. I immersed myself, put myself in the trenches with some of the architects and developers, senior developers that we had at that point in time to really get behind the scenes and, if you will, under the hood of what ServiceNow has to offer. And when I started to do that, I really understood where and how the system worked. It's like immersing yourself into, like I said, under that hood, seeing how the mechanics of something in the modern combustion engine actually function and work. And when I did that in ServiceNow, it really, once again, another eye-opening moment for me. Not just that there is a UI, UX that's present, but the ability to understand what drives that UI and UX, the workflows, the coding, the business rules, the UI policies, the different components that really make up what someone sees when they interact with the platform. And within that space, I think that started to help me learn, build that foundation, start putting up that structure, putting in the insulation, the sheetrock, that house analogy to get to that finished product of who I am today. The one thing to note is, even though I think that I'm at a fairly good spot and a good state within my career and my learning, ServiceNow is ever changing. And ServiceNow is continuing to shift. So I still have to learn. And one of the things when I interview people for this position, one of the questions I ask is a Maslow's hierarchy of needs question. And I think when I ask somebody in IT, how does Maslow's hierarchy of needs relate to you? Essentially, how do you see yourself, or what motivates you is the kind of secret sauce behind that question. And they look at me a little bit weird sometimes. And there's a reason behind that, right? Because Maslow's hierarchy of needs is ever increasing. You have to ever, shift between levels. It's a hierarchy. You shift between levels to get to that self-actualization within your career. And I want to gauge where people are within their ServiceNow journey. That's like I said, the entire intent behind my question. And when I do that and they start to answer that and I see those great answers come forth, then I can understand where they're trying to go. Realizing that they're not a SME in everything ServiceNow, but a SME in certain aspects of ServiceNow, and that they are going to increase their knowledge and understanding of ServiceNow is wonderful for them.
Great tidbit of information there for any future candidates who find themselves talking to Dallas. But it's also a great insight into how you view not just the platform, but the individuals that you try to bring on board, which is a great segue into the final part of what I wanted to talk to you about. Given the success that CRI has had and your own success and growth, now that you're head of the platform, you've got some strategic insight into what the next 1 to 2 years will look like, what the plans are for the broader business, and how that will relate to the need to continue to grow the workforce. So two parts to this question. First one being, when you look at the next 1 to 2 years, what are you particularly excited about? And second part, how will that translate into the need to bring in more people to help you on this journey?
So I think back to knowledge of this year and the knowledge before. And going with my team this year was very interesting because knowledge last year talked about AI a little bit, right? This year at knowledge, if people had the pleasure to go and see the conversation and kind of hear and envision the journey that ServiceNow is going to take, there was huge investments and massive amounts of conversation and chatter outside of the normal keynotes and sessions that you could actually attend related to AI and what that's going to mean within ServiceNow. And I was extremely excited within that space just because of, once again, it gives you the art of the possible. It lays forth that journey with the direction that ServiceNow is going. It reminds me, a couple of years ago, we had a unique opportunity to meet with a client, have a conversation with them, understand their pain points, and then solution something. And like I said, a couple of years ago, what they were asking was future looking within what ServiceNow is capable of doing today. And at that point in time, they weren't able to do it. And it was really related to project management and some predictive intelligence, machine learning components behind projects there to be able to generate essentially project summaries, to be able to send it out to their executives, to be able to see this information. And within the journey that AI has taken, that possibility exists today and will continue to exist. The way I see this is obviously continued growth within and showing the scalability that ServiceNow has to offer for a bunch of different potential clients, whether it be in commercial, federal, the state, local, and education side of the house. And I want people to see the power of AI and have that opportunity to purchase something like Now Assist, whether it be for SPM or the different Now Assists that they continue to come out with and innovate within, because there's a lot of potential behind that. And once people see the potential and realize the potential and the cost savings and what that's going to do for their practice themselves with the growth that it's going to present, that's what excites me. and the platform in general. ServiceNow, I love the community that exists out there, whether it be the forums to be able to write a problem or ask a question or suggest a change. ServiceNow takes that feedback and will implement those things if there's enough feasibility or validity behind what you're stating and justification that it justifies making a change. And that feedback loop is something that excites me as well, because ServiceNow is ever changing in accordance with the direction that they want to head. Outside of that, I think within CRI specifically, the journey that we want to take is showcasing, building our skill set, building that foundation within essentially AI and the capabilities and how that platform's scaling, so we can continue to show our potential clients within those spaces that I talked about previously, the art of the possible.
Mm-hmm. Final question for me, Dallas. When you're speaking to candidates about CRI Advantage and your team in particular, and you feel that this is an individual who can add some value, is the right fit for the org, what is it that you tell them about CRI team, the culture, the mission, that gets them excited enough to join you guys over some of the other great companies also trying to hire this talent?
In a recent interview that I did, I actually had a candidate ask me that question. Why should we choose you? Or why should I choose you? Why should I choose CRI? I love that, to be fair, because, not only for clients, but for candidates and anybody that we're working with, they have to be the right fit for us and we have to be the right fit for them. And within that interview with that individual that was trying or vying for a position, competing against other people, that person, that individual was the only one that asked that question. And the answer that I gave, I hope was a great answer for them to understand what we do. Culture is a big thing here at CRI, right? We have a culture that is present that is more that mom and pop type feel, right? That, hey, we're going to give you services or provide you services, that customer service that's going to make really relate to us. You want to do business with us. And when it comes to candidates, it's the same thing. We have that culture. We want you to be immersed in our culture. We want you to come and feel like you're part of a larger overall process and company, because it's important, like I said, for them to fit in and us to morph around them, to engulf them and let them become a part of CRI and an employee of CRI, but also a huge part of CRI. Because there's nothing else that within the interactions we have with clients, they don't interact with the company per se, right? They know that those individuals that they interact with are a part of a company, but they interact with the people that are a part of CRI. And people are a huge part of CRI, because without them, we wouldn't be able to achieve our goals. We wouldn't be able to meet the needs of our clients. We wouldn't be able to showcase what ServiceNow has to offer. We wouldn't be able to show people the art of the possible.
Dallas, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. Delighted to have you on the show finally. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you sharing your background, your journey, and the environment at CRI Advantage. It really does sound like a great place to work for anyone who's in the ServiceNow ecosystem, and obviously a lot more growth ahead. So exciting times for sure. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at CRI Advantage the very best of luck in months and years to come, and look forward to having you back on the show again in the near future.
It was a pleasure, JP. Anytime I can showcase ServiceNow and CRI, it's one thing that I'm passionate about. So appreciate the opportunity and appreciate your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.